What's unique about Taiwanese cuisine? How is it different from Chinese food?
Today we talk to food journalist Clarissa Wei about the stories behind Taiwan's most iconic dishes. This is Taiwan Insider. Welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about Taiwanese cuisine. What do you think of, Itamar, when you hear Taiwanese cuisine?
Well, I think of sweet food, I think of goopy noodles, and I think of stinky tofu.
Yum! Well, our partners at Voice of America asked some people on the streets of New York what they think of when they hear Taiwanese cuisine.
Bubble tea, and there's a Taiwanese restaurant right there, and there's this one sausage dish I always get, so Taiwanese sausage. Well, bubble tea I love. And you like the brown sugar boba or anything?
Yeah, bubble tea the first thing, because you said it now, and I love bubble tea. I'm from Germany and that's not that good, but here it's way, way better. Nothing besides bubble tea, I think. Yes, I think it's always a lot of meat and stuff, but my boyfriend loves it. He loves beef noodles and fried rice and chicken and stuff.
I enjoy some Taiwanese food, but I don't really eat that much.
Yeah, I do like bubble tea. I do like bubble tea. I usually like just classic, so I know it's boba tea. Is boba tea and bubble tea the same? I have no idea, I'm sorry. My PI is from Taiwan, and he always drinks boba tea. And I had no idea, so I've never tried bubble tea, so I only tried boba tea, and I had no idea that bubble tea and boba tea is like the same thing, it's just a different way of calling it. Yeah. So that was very new. Yeah. Now I know that bubble tea and boba tea is the same. Yeah.
So, Itamar, were you surprised that most people just said bubble tea?
Not really. That's because Taiwan is a small country after all, and I actually don't think its food is that well represented outside of Taiwan.
That's right, and that's why we're doing the show. And we're talking with an expert today. Her name is Clarissa Wei. She wrote the book Made in Taiwan, Stories and Recipes from this Island Nation. And we're going to learn all about Taiwanese food from her.
So what about this moment made you want to use a cookbook to talk about Taiwanese identity?
I think, and I say this in my cookbook too, the fact that a lot of people here in Taiwan have Chinese ethnicity or they are very familiar with Chinese culture, that's not conflicting with Taiwanese identity. These things aren't mutually exclusive, and our Chineseness is a beautiful and an inherent part of our identity, but it is not the only thing that defines us, or it is not the defining thing. And I think that's kind of where we are with Taiwanese food right now. Most people say Taiwanese food is Chinese food. That's not true. It's its own category. And similar to the cuisines of like Singapore or Malaysia, they have Chinese influences too. And if you interview someone there, they'll say, oh yeah, my family's Chinese, but they're also Singaporean, and they wouldn't call Singaporean food Chinese food, or they wouldn't call Malaysian food Chinese
like a regional
food.
Cuisine, right?
Exactly. It's not a regional cuisine because Taiwan is not a regional part of Taiwan. Has never been ruled by the People's Republic of China. As time went on and I started researching Taiwanese food, I thought it was very, very important to sort of say the differences, and there are a lot of differences.
So tell us how you would describe Taiwanese cuisine.
It's hard to sum up in one sentence, but it is the food that came and evolved out of this island and is unique to this island. Yeah, so Taiwanese food is the food of Taiwan and unique to Taiwan.
And there's actually a lot of influences from different countries like Japan, the United States. Tell us about some of these influences.
First, we have the indigenous people, and their food culture is still present in very subtle ways in like the ingredients that we use. But the first major influence was 200 years ago during the Qing dynasty. And a lot of people are like, okay, but the first immigrants who came over were from China, therefore Taiwan is Chinese food. But a lot of the first immigrants who came to America from Europe also came 200 years ago. You wouldn't say American food is British food.
That's right.
It's true.
Yeah, so back then they were really poor. A lot of oysters, a lot of use of starch, and a lot of like pickles. So there's like pickled watermelon, which you can still see in like Tainan. A lot of pickled mangoes, and rice was actually quite rare because it was a cash crop, and most people just thickened things with sweet potato starch. That's why that.
We have those
oyster
like
omelet.
gun,
Gun,
those, like,
exactly. Those
soups
thick
and stuff.
pottage soups. So that's from that era. And then we move on. What happens after that?
Japanese era.
Yeah, the Dutch was said to inspire our culture of deep frying. So when we have like the deep fried
really?
mackerel soup, that's from them. And the Japanese era was really interesting. They monopolized all of our core industries. So our sugar, our soy sauce, our rice vinegar, our rice wine today is still made in the Japanese fashion.
Wow.
And I think that's kind of where I had my eureka moment. If you Google a lot of Taiwanese recipes in English, they will say, oh, you can use Shaoxing wine. But if you take Taiwanese mijiu, which is Taiwanese rice wine, and take Shaoxing wine and you smell it, they're completely different things.
Yeah.
Taiwanese rice wine smells and tastes more like cooking sake than
right.
Shaoxing wine.
Right.
Looks like it too.
Yeah, same with our soy sauce too. The fact that the building blocks of Taiwanese cuisine is unique to Taiwan and more similar to Japan than China goes to show it is its own separate
That's
cuisine.
true. And we have some interesting habits like eating hamburgers in the morning. Can you tell us how that started?
Yeah, so that we move further on in time during the Cold War. In 1954, the United States flooded Taiwan with U.S. aid in the form of wheat. They gave Taiwan billions of dollars of money and also lots of wheat shipments. And this was said to be a far better influence against communism than bombs. But people here, Taiwan is a subtropical country. Wheat does not grow well here. People here had no idea what to do with it. But they sent people to the States to learn baking school, to learn how to use the wheat. And this was also around the time when the first surge of Chinese refugees came from China during the Civil War. And a lot of them came from the north where they were used to cooking with wheat or making dough-based dishes. And they started using the wheat to make noodles or buns and, flatbreads and stuff. Taiwanese people were really not used to eating large amounts of wheat. There were some, so we have like a dish called peddler noodles, 蛋仔面. But if you look at these dishes, they're very small portions, and it's because wheat was really expensive and always imported in. You didn't eat like big hearty bowls of it.
Right.
Why do we have so many bakeries and why are there so many flavors? Like how 85 degrees C is so popular in America is because there's so many flavors of bread.
Yeah, so our bakeries are influenced by the Taiwanese love of Japanese culture. So our bakeries are like Japanese style. And the bakeries came about because of this influx of wheat. We had so much of it. It was so cheap. There were also really problematic marketing campaigns back then linking wheat eating to like a taller frame and like a whiter skin. Like they really wanted people to use it. And so that's kind of when the first bakeries started, and it just kind of took off from there.
Is that related to why like northern Chinese style breakfast foods like xiaobing or like buns and stuff became so dominant in breakfast cuisine?
Yeah, so that actually became really popular because of the Little League baseball games.
Really?
Yeah, so in the...
I love that story about your dad.
Yeah, I think it was in the 60s. I have to look, and I don't remember the exact dates, but Little League baseball was such a big thing when my parents were kids. My dad would stay up late at night because of these baseball games. A lot of people stayed up until 4 a.m. in the morning, and the only thing they could eat, this was way before 7-Eleven, was the northern Chinese breakfast.
Like mantou and buns and
like
things like that?
youtiao, salbing.
And now it's become so Taiwanese, right?
Well, that's what people think of when
Right.
they think
People
Taiwanese food
think
almost.
The Chinese refugees who came over, they only made up 15% of the population, but their food and culture dictated the majority. When my parents were young, they watched, Fu Pei Mei, who's like a celebrated cookbook author in Taiwan, and she was seen as making authentic Chinese food for the world, and that, Taiwan was preserving Chinese food because China didn't have it. Meanwhile, the food of the majority of people here in Taiwan was being ignored, and it was all marketing. Same with the beef noodle soup. Ma Ying-jeou at that time, who was the mayor of Taipei, he started the beef noodle soup competition.
Really? Oh, the competition.
Yeah.
He didn't start beef noodle soup.
No, he didn't start beef noodle soup. He started the competition, and the dish is very much a product of Chinese refugees as well. And that propelled it to the international stage. So these dishes that were very much, post-1950s, made by the Chinese refugees, kind of started to represent Taiwan on the international stage.
So what about pork belly rice? This is like another quintessential Taiwanese. How did that come about?
I've interviewed vendors, and they're just like, the secret to it is you just want to use the fattiest cut as possible. Like, you don't actually want the meat.
Yeah.
And it was just, back then, it was the cheapest part of the pig, like they used the meat for more expensive things, and then they just had the skin and fat left over. And in order to make that palatable, you just braise it down in soy sauce and sugar for a very long time until it's soft, and you dress it over rice.
What about boba tea, the one thing that everyone knows about?
It's not food.
It's not food, but I do want to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, so everyone has this story that boba tea was invented in 1980s, either by a shop in Tainan or in Taichung. And this has been repeated over and over again, and we get it. But what I found that was interesting is that eating tapioca starch-based balls has been a part of the Taiwanese culinary culture for hundreds of years. People used to chew it in the fields to prevent heat stroke.
Really? I had no idea.
It's like an old Chinese medicine type of thing. So these starch balls are very particular to Taiwan and very, very old, actually.
What do you think about the kind of Taiwanese food that has made it over to the United States? Like, why have they been able to make it to the West, the dishes that you see?
As we said earlier, I think a lot of the people who moved there, their families had come from the mainland post 1949, so you see a lot of beef noodle soup. You have to think of that wave of immigration, and that's when my parents went over too. This was in the 1970s, 80s, 60s almost, and this was before martial law was lifted in Taiwan. And so these immigrants in America, when they were growing up in Taiwan, they were told that Taiwan was Chinese. So they brought over their dishes, but there wasn't as much of an attempt as there is now to be like, this is Taiwanese food. So you see a lot of influences from maybe, their grandparents' food from China, and it's not as distinguished. But now you start to see some young people who are moving over to America now trying to teach people the difference.
Right, I see some guo bao vendors.
Guo bao is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the
That's
first
very Taiwanese, right?
Taiwanese food, or food that doesn't come from Chinese migrant
Guo
populations
bao
that
is
has
an
really
old
broken
one.
through, right?
Yeah, and it really has to just do with storytelling. Guo bao was, Eddie Huang in New York, and he's a great storyteller, and he was able to push forward this dish, and it's also just very palatable.
It is.
Yes.
to
Delicious.
the American audience.
It's like
So-
comfort food. What about
Yeah.
stinky tofu? Tell us about that. That's kind of like a famous dish among foreigners because it's so different and very pungent.
Actually,
I think it's delicious.
My favorite Taiwanese
I love
food.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a recipe for that in my book because I find it one of the most misunderstood dishes in Taiwanese cuisine. The tofu itself is not fermented, and I think that's why people get
Really?
freaked out. All it is tofu soaked in a pickle brine for 3 days, and then it's deep fried. This
So is
pickle
it bad
brine,
for you?
No,
Because-
it's actually healthy because
okay.
there's probiotics. And I guess if you
Because
deep
my
fry it.
husband says it's bad for me.
Really?
Yeah,
I've never
he's
heard
it's
that.
not healthy.
No, so at its core, it's fermented amaranth. That's the smell. So I made this brine, and I was like, okay, it's starting to smell like stinky tofu. A lot of vendors now will add things, so they'll add like dried shrimp, maybe they'll add a little bit of meat, and that's where that misconception comes from, that it's not really clean. But you can achieve that signature smell by just fermenting amaranth. But it takes a long time. It takes 2 months at least to get that aroma.
Wow.
And then after you get that, you just dip your tofu in it enough for it to soak in, and then you deep fry it. So this whole thing that you're just eating moldy tofu is completely false. It's as hygienic as your average jar of pickles.
That's an amazing thing that I hope makes it to the United States soon.
Yeah.
They definitely need some more of that.
So what do you want people to know most about Taiwanese cuisine?
That it's not Chinese cuisine. That's really the thesis of my whole book, and how it's different. And that's why I started with my intro about the culinary history.
Well, Clarissa, it's been so fascinating to talk with you and to
Yeah.
learn so much about Taiwanese cuisine. I hope that our listeners, our viewers, got to get some insight into Taiwanese cuisine, and definitely check out her book. It's called Made in Taiwan, Stories and Recipes from the Island Nation. It's coming out later this year, right?
Yeah, September 19th.
And you can pre-order. So you can catch her on Twitter, Clarissa Wei. Dear Clarissa,
Dear
right?
Clarissa, yeah.
So anyways, thank you so much, for Clarissa.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was great to learn all about Taiwanese food, don't you think, Itamar?
Yes, absolutely.
And what's your favorite Taiwanese food?
Oh, no question, stinky tofu.
Oh, I love that too.
Yes.
Crunchy or steamed?
Steamed.
Steamed.
definitely.
I like both of them.
Yes.
But I think I like steamed better, a little bit more tasty.
Mm-hmm. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at some of the other Taiwanese classics that international tourists like in Taiwan.
Taiwan's night markets have always been a hotspot for foreign tourists to come and try out the local food. Some snacks like sausages are welcome to most palates, but other options like stinky tofu may take a while for international visitors to warm to. According to a recent survey, the most popular Taiwanese food amongst foreigners is soup dumplings. That's followed by beef noodles, Michelin delicacies, bubble tea, and tropical fruit. The survey also shows that the most popular souvenir snacks are pineapple cakes, followed by tea leaves, coffee, alcohol, and sun cakes. Now that Taiwan's borders have been open to international tourists for several months, the country hopes that more foreigners will come to discover Taiwan's tasty treats and more.
Well, we have an announcement to make, and that is that this is going to be our last show for a while. Itamar and I actually are leaving Taiwan. So how do you feel about leaving Taiwan, Itamar?
Very bittersweet, for sure, because I've spent, almost 4 years here, and not only that, I mean, so many important things in my life have happened here. I started my career, I learned this language, that has opened up a whole new world to me.
You met your
and
fiance?
I was going to say that, yeah, and I met the person I'm marrying here. So it's definitely forever going to hold a special place in my heart. I'm going to miss the mountains, the people, the spectacular culture, all of it. And the food, of course, right?
That's right. The food is delicious. And I'm going back to where I grew up.
Yeah,
California.
what about you? Like, how do you feel after so many years going back to the place you grew up, right?
I mean, I'm really excited about going back.
Do you feel like you're going home? Or do you feel like Taiwan has become your home?
Well, I think they're both my home.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
so,
great.
and I have friends and family in both places. I do miss California. I've been here a very long time, decades.
Yeah.
So longer than you. So it's
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
like,
you made a whole life here. It's amazing.
I made a life. I have a family, kids, career. And it's been great. It's been great to be at RTI all these years. We've got to do audio, got to do video.
Yeah.
And
what about Taiwan Insider? What made you first want to start this program?
Well, actually, we got assigned, like, you need to do a video program that's about the news. And we wanted to do something that's not just like, a news anchor kind of thing. We want to do something a little bit more casual, like a magazine, and to approach it from different angles and kind of give people an insight, and also to have interviews. So I think I've really enjoyed having the freedom to be creative, to come up with all kinds of ideas with different hosts, and then also to be able to interview people from all around the world.
Yeah, it's amazing. And
it's fascinating.
I definitely think I speak for everyone watching and everyone at RTI when we say, thank you for all the incredible interviews and content that you have made over these last few years. It's just remarkable, really remarkable.
Well, it's been fun. It's been a joy, really, to talk to all those people. A lot of friends of Taiwan, actually.
Absolutely.
People from all over the world, working on Taiwan's behalf, trying to support us in different ways. Because Taiwan is so important to the world, right?
And especially in this moment, right? This show started just as Taiwan became this important international issue.
That's true.
And I really think your idea, to create this show and to bring this kind of content to people around the world was really important, really important.
Right. So the thing is, there's 3 people leaving our English team this month. So they want to take a break from this show, but they do want to restart it in the near future. If you have any ideas, comments, what you'd like to see in a video show coming from RTI, please let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, we do read all of your comments on our videos. If you tweet us, if you send us an email, we'll read all of it, and we're always looking for feedback.
Right. It really means a lot to us when you tell us what you think. So anyways, we hope that you have enjoyed Taiwan Insider. It's been great to be with all of you, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
For Taiwan Insider, I'm Natalie Tso.
And for the last time, I'm Itamar Waksman.
Bye.